what if the secret to fixing your chronic knee pain, your broken sleep, and like your chaotic digital life was actually the exact same thing?
I mean, that is a massive claim to make right out of the gate.
Right. But what if treating your life like a literal spreadsheet was the key to total zen?
Well, it sounds incredibly clinical when you frame it that way. I mean, we usually think of Zen or, personal well-being as this process of letting go, of unplugging.
Yeah, exactly.
We definitely don't associate it with rigorously logging every single input and output of our daily routine.
That is exactly what I thought when I first looked at our source material for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever felt entirely overwhelmed by the whole self-improvement industry telling you to overhaul your entire existence by 5 in the morning.
Oh, the 5 a.m. club. Yeah.
Right. Well, this is going to be a massive paradigm shift because today we aren't looking at some sweeping self-help manifesto. We're analyzing something highly specific and intensely personal.
Very personal.
Yeah, it's a journal entry. It's titled The Holistic Ledger, a weekly review of balanced living, written by someone named Ang, documenting week 23 of the year 2026.
And we really need to establish the analytical framework here because this isn't your typical Dear Diary situation.
No, not at all.
Right. Ang operates on this philosophy of, observation without judgment. The ledger is honestly a masterclass in treating one's life as an interconnected ecosystem.
Like a closed loop.
Exactly. Ang treats daily existence as a closed system where specific inputs, whether that's a meal, an hour of sleep, or even a line of computer code, they predictably dictate specific outputs.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the foundation of this ecosystem, which is, the physical body.
Makes sense.
Yeah, understanding how Ang tracks biology really sets the baseline for the entire ledger.
Yeah.
So looking at the sleep tracking for week 23, Ang achieved a 7.7-hour average for the week.
That's a very solid number.
It really is. And on weekdays, it was a highly consistent, solid block. But the weekend featured what Ang categorizes as polyphasic sleep patterns.
Right, which basically means sleep that is broken up into multiple consecutive chunks instead of, one long stretch.
Yeah. And, I mean, when most people experience a fragmented night of sleep like that, they wake up super frustrated.
Oh, absolutely. They write the whole weekend off as a failure.
Totally. But Ang, on the other hand, investigates the physiological input. Like, the total duration of sleep was actually maintained, but the pattern was fractured.
And looking at the ledger, Ang traced this fragmentation directly back to eating dinner way too late in the evening.
Which makes sense on a surface level, but how does a late meal actually fracture a sleep cycle? Is it really just the discomfort of a full stomach?
Well, it's much deeper than that, actually. Your circadian rhythm is heavily tied to your core body temperature and your metabolism.
Okay.
So when you eat a heavy meal late at night, your digestive system is basically forced to work overtime.
Oh, right, because it has to process all that food.
Exactly. And that metabolic process generates heat, keeping your core body temperature elevated at the exact moment it needs to be dropping to initiate those deep, slow-wave sleep phases.
Wow. So the body is essentially forced to choose between digesting food and consolidating sleep.
Yep. And the result is that you wake up repeatedly.
So Ang sees the polyphasic sleep, looks at the late dinner, and basically identifies the bug in the biological software.
And applies a tactical patch. Ang notes the use of a supplement to help with sleep, but what is crucial here is the methodology.
Right, it's not everyday thing.
Exactly. It's not taken every single day out of blind habit. It is used tactically just to course correct the circadian rhythm when the sleep schedule starts drifting. It's a subtle nudge to the system, not a blunt force instrument.
And that psychological approach to the body becomes even more apparent when we look at how Ang handles weight. During this specific week, Ang hit a multi-year weight high on the scale.
Yep, 70.90 kilograms.
Right? With a weekly average of 70.09 kilograms. Now, for most of us, stepping on a scale and seeing a multi-year high is a moment of acute distress.
It triggers a full-on panic.
Oh, a massive cascade of guilt, panic, and usually some kind of drastic, unsustainable diet restriction starting the very next Monday.
But what's fascinating here is the absolute absence of an emotional reaction to that number. Ang approaches the scale with total objective detachment.
It's just a number on a page.
Exactly. By treating the body's responses as mere data points, the anxiety that's typically associated with health tracking just completely vanishes.
I have to admit, I struggle with this. I think most people treat weight gain like a stock market crash.
Yeah.
We panic, we sell all our assets, we swear we will never look at a carbohydrate ever again.
Right. It's a very emotional response.
But Ang looks at the ledger and simply registers the variables. At first, there was an experiment with a high-sodium soup-based meal right before bed.
Delicious, but salty.
Yeah. Second, a recent shift to a structured 3-meal-a-day routine. And third, an increase in physical activity.
So if you look at the physiological mechanics of those variables, it makes perfect sense. High sodium intake forces the body to retain water to dilute the salt concentration in the bloodstream.
Okay, so doing that right before bed means the body holds on to that fluid weight overnight.
Precisely. And combine that with the increased physical activity, Ang noted, which actually caused muscle tightness around the waistline and legs.
Ah, because when muscles are challenged, they experience micro tears, right?
Yes, and they temporarily retain fluid as part of the repair and growth process.
So the conclusion drawn from the data is that there is likely simultaneous fat shedding and muscle gaining happening, entirely masked by temporary water retention from a salty soup.
Yep, the direct cause and effect is right there on the page. Late, salty dinners disrupt sleep and spike the scale.
It completely reframes the narrative. The scale isn't a judge handing down a verdict on your willpower. It's simply a sensor recording on the current fluid dynamics of your biology.
That's a great way to put it.
I do want to bring up a concern, though, for you listening right now. Hearing about tracking sleep down to the decimal point, logging the sodium content of late-night soup, monitoring daily weight fluctuations.
It sounds exhausting.
Yeah, I can easily see how this level of hyperfixation might absolutely drive someone crazy. Doesn't this create a different kind of anxiety?
Well, that is the paradox of the ledger mindset. You would think tracking creates cognitive load, but the evidence from Ang's week suggests it actually offloads it.
How so?
Think about the alternative. When you don't have the data, you rely on a vague sense of feeling. You feel heavy, you feel lethargic, and because you don't know why, you internalize it as a personal failing.
You judge yourself.
Exactly. You spin your wheels wondering if your whole lifestyle is broken.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
But when you have the data, the mystery is gone. The solution is just a mechanical adjustment for the following week. Ang's takeaway isn't, I need to starve myself. The takeaway is, time the dinner earlier in the evening, and perhaps increase protein intake to support the new muscle activity causing the tightness. The cognitive load is reduced because the problem is already solved on paper.
Okay, you mentioned the muscle tightness and activity, which actually brings up how Ang moves through physical space. Because looking at this ledger, Ang isn't hitting a commercial gym for 2 hours a day to get these muscle gains.
No, the exercise metrics are fascinating.
Yeah, the step count increased from an average of 6,862 steps to 7,298 steps this week. And those extra steps didn't come from a treadmill.
No, they came from mundane daily chores, grocery runs, and spending time moving soil and heavy pots for a garden.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I like to think of incidental exercise like a self-winding watch.
Oh, I like that.
Right? With the traditional watch, you have to stop what you're doing, turn the dial, and manually wind the gears to keep it alive. That's modern gym culture. You stop your day to go wind your body.
That's a very apt comparison.
But a self-winding watch uses the kinetic energy of your everyday movements. The simple act of living your life and moving your wrist is what powers the machine. Ang has structured a life where the maintenance of the environment intrinsically maintains the body.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this really illustrates the concept of incidental exercise, which is a critical component of a holistic ecosystem.
Because we've kind of engineered that out of our lives, haven't we?
We really have. Modern life has largely separated our physical exertion from our daily survival tasks. We sit immobile at a desk, staring at a screen, and then we drive a car to a dedicated building to lift heavy pieces of iron just for the sake of lifting them.
Yeah, it's wild when you say it out loud.
But by engaging intimately with the physical world, like hauling groceries, fixing the home, moving earth, the physical fitness requirement is met organically. Ang harvested wild sandy soil during a massive heat wave to test its viability on plant seedlings.
Which is no small task.
Exactly. That requires squatting, lifting, carrying, and intense core stabilization.
It is intense functional strength training disguised entirely as a gardening hobby.
And Ang documents the tangible physical benefits of this active lifestyle. With adequate rest, Ang notes a significant reduction in sporadic knee pain and muscle spasms.
So the physical inflammation naturally subdued, making stretching feel natural again.
Which really highlights the mechanism of active recovery. Sometimes when we have joint pain or muscle spasms, our instinct is to become completely sedentary to protect the joint.
Right, just lay on the couch with an ice pack.
Exactly. But controlled functional movement, like moving pots in a garden, it increases blood flow to the inflamed areas, flushing out metabolic waste and delivering nutrients. It lubricates the joints far better than static resting.
It completely changes how you view your weekend chore list. It's not, I have to haul this dirt because the yard is a mess. It's, I am fulfilling my strength recovery training for the week while simultaneously evaluating wild potting mix.
It's an incredibly efficient use of time and energy, and it remains fluid too. Aang notes that keeping steps around the 5,000 to 6,000 mark is adequate moving forward.
With a note to maybe revisit swimming if the gardening tapers off right.
Exactly. There is no rigid, punishing schedule that leads to burnout. It responds to the feedback of the ledger.
Okay, so we've seen how Aang patches bugs in human biology and uses the physical environment as a self-winding watch. But how does this ledger mindset handle digital bugs?
Oh, this is where it gets really deep.
Because just as Aang maintains the garden and the body, there is an incredibly rigorous application of this maintenance to the digital and intellectual environment. I mean, Aang is writing 3 posts a day.
Which is a huge output.
Yeah. And to process all this output, Aang uses an AI tool called NotebookLM to generate podcasts summarizing the writing.
It is a fascinating use of a feedback loop. Aang generates original content, feeds it into an artificial intelligence, and then critically evaluates the AI's interpretation of those thoughts.
And Aang highly recommends the insights generated by the audio podcasts, but explicitly notes a critique of the tool's visual capabilities. Aang observes that the explainer videos generated by NotebookLM lack genuine insight, particularly when it comes to the nuances of coding.
Right.
Why would an AI be great at making an audio podcast about code, but terrible at making an explainer video about it?
Well, it comes down to how artificial intelligence processes different types of logic. Large language models are highly adept at sequential narrative, so predicting the next word or summarizing text linearly, which works beautifully for audio.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense.
But coding is not just a linear narrative. It is structural architecture. It involves spatial relationships, dependencies, and interacting systems.
Oh, so it's more like a blueprint than a story.
Exactly. Converting that complex architecture into a linear visual video often strips away the underlying structural logic, resulting in a very superficial explanation. Aang testing these boundaries is just another form of data collection.
And the coding itself is relentless. The ledger documents daily pull request contributions, or PRs, across an absolutely massive variety of programming languages.
It's an impressive list.
We are talking Go, Python, Elixir, Erlang, Rust, and Haskell.
Which, for those who might not know, jumping between something like Python, which is object-oriented, to Haskell, which is purely functional, requires an immense amount of cognitive flexibility.
It's like switching between speaking French and playing a violin.
Yeah. Aang is just hopping through different open-source repositories in GitHub, submitting code to projects that catch their attention.
But the motivation behind this is key, right?
Yes. Aang explicitly states that they are observing and collecting data on the social aspects of the GitHub ecosystem purely out of intellectual curiosity. It is not just about writing syntax.
So they're acting as a digital sociologist, mapping how human beings collaborate, argue, and build systems in an open source environment. So what does this all mean? I have to ask you, listening to this right now, why on earth does someone log their Erlang dependency breakages right next to their miso noodle soup intake?
It's a fair question.
Why track an Elixir 1.2.0 software release alongside the fact that they're eating baked beans on bread for lunch?
Because the ledger mindset recognizes no arbitrary boundaries between the biological, the environmental, and the digital. It is all systems management. A failure in one system provides lessons for managing the others.
I want to make sure everyone understands the technical side of this because it clicked for me when I realized it's the exact same as the soup and the scale.
Let's hear it.
So, in the ledger, Aang notes the release of Elixir version 1.2.0.0 and Erlang OTP 29. Aang observes that while Elixir maintains backward compatibility, meaning the new update plays nicely with the old code,
Right.
the newer Erlang updates cause significant breakages, particularly with something called Phoenix and its related dependencies. Can you explain that in plain English for us?
Okay, think of it like a house. Erlang is the city's main water line and plumbing infrastructure. Elixir and a framework like Phoenix are the specific pipes and faucets inside your house.
Okay, I follow.
Aang noticed that when the city updated the municipal plumbing system, the Erlang update, it was too aggressive. It broke the water pressure in his specific bathroom, the Phoenix dependencies.
Which is the exact same mechanism as the physical biology.
Exactly.
Just as the high-sodium soup, the input, caused water retention and a spike on the scale, which is the breakage or output, the Erlang update caused a dependency breakage in the software.
Precisely. Aang is fundamentally an observer of systems. Whether evaluating how wild sandy soil in a heat wave affects delicate plant seedlings, or how a municipal plumbing update affects a bathroom sink, the underlying skill is identical.
It is intellectual curiosity paired with systematic observation.
And constant learning and debugging is treated as a daily metric, just like a step count. By anticipating the continuous integration updates needed to fix those broken software dependencies, Aang is performing preventative maintenance on the digital environment.
Just as taking a sleep supplement is preventative maintenance for the biological environment.
It's mapping the chaos. If you can map the inputs and outputs of a system, whether it is an open-source software ecosystem or human digestion, you can prevent system failure.
Which brings us to the most practical part of the ledger. If the body, the garden, and the digital repositories are these massive, complex ecosystems, how do you keep them all running without collapsing under the weight of your own tracking?
You have to zoom in on the living microclimates and the microhabits.
Let's examine the fish keeping, because this was wild to me. Aang breeds Apistogramma cichlids.
Right. These are very small, highly territorial freshwater fish native to South America.
And the ledger notes they are down to one remaining pair, and Aang is patiently observing whether this last pair will successfully mate.
But Aang doesn't just sit there waiting. Aang starts upcycling unused EPS foam boxes into outdoor backyard balcony ponds.
Now, EPS foam is essentially styrofoam, right?
Right.
Like the thick coolers used for shipping perishables.
Exactly. And because the balcony has a specific microclimate with long sunlight exposure, Aang uses these foam boxes to plant aquatic plants that require full sun.
So why foam?
This demonstrates a profound understanding of environmental mechanics. EPS foam is an incredible thermal insulator. By using it for an outdoor pond, Aang ensures that the water temperature remains stable despite the extreme heat wave we mentioned earlier.
So it prevents the aquatic plants from literally boiling in the sun.
Exactly. It is creating a perfectly balanced new ecosystem out of literal recycled garbage.
And that hyper-awareness of microclimates extends right back into the human living room. The ledger mentions waiting on larger house repairs, replacing broken appliances, painting jobs, and fixing grout work on the tile in the front yard.
Which is overwhelming for anyone.
Oh, totally. Now, human nature dictates that when we face pending large-scale repairs, we default to total paralysis. We tell ourselves we will wait for the perfect weekend to fix everything at once, and so nothing gets done.
But Aang institutes a strict rule. Declutter just one item per day. One single item.
It sounds almost hilariously inconsequential.
It really does. But it works.
And the meditation practice follows the exact same logic. I always thought meditation required a massive commitment. You know, you need a quiet room, a special cushion, 30 minutes of absolute silence.
The stereotype, yeah.
But Aang is logging extremely short sitting meditations of 1, 2, or 3 minutes. Or doing walking meditations while literally raking leaves in the yard. Aang's own note on this is just stoic as usual.
This raises an important question for anyone trying to build better routines. What is the relationship between consistency and intensity? We have a cultural bias that assumes higher intensity equals better results. But Aang's ledger proves that intensity is often the mortal enemy of consistency.
I love that phrase. Intensity is the mortal enemy of consistency.
It's true.
Because if I tell myself I have to meditate for 45 minutes, my brain will immediately manufacture a dozen urgent excuses not to do it. But if my rule is 1 minute, I cannot rationally justify skipping 60 seconds of breathing.
Exactly. A 1-minute meditation or a one-item decluttering rule completely bypasses the brain's procrastination mechanisms. It is the ultimate low-friction approach to building a balanced life.
The barrier to entry is so minuscule that the action simply becomes a seamless part of the day, like brushing your teeth.
Which is exactly how Aang approaches food when busy. The meal prep notes mention baked beans and eggs on bread, soft-boiled eggs, cooked salads, and rooibos tea with milk.
Right. It isn't a gourmet, multi-hour culinary endeavor.
No, it is low-friction fuel. It gets the required nutrients into the system without draining cognitive energy. The separation between a grueling chore and daily wellness dissolves completely.
Every single habit is scaled down to a level where failure is practically impossible. The compounding effect of these microscopic actions, decluttering one pen, meditating for 1 minute, carrying one pot of soil, is what creates a stable, resilient life ecosystem over time.
It's all about tiny inputs.
It is genuinely incredible to see it all laid out. We've gone from the core body temperature of polyphasic sleep to debugging Erline plumbing, from moving sandy soil to breeding territorial South American fish.
It's quite a journey.
So, let's distill this. What is the true value of peering into someone else's meticulously tracked week?
The value lies in realizing that being truly well-informed about your own life doesn't require a master's degree in data science. It simply requires paying active, non-judgmental attention to the inputs you consume and the outputs you produce.
So true.
You do not have to breed setchlids, and you certainly do not have to submit open-source pull requests in Haskell to benefit from this framework.
You just have to adopt the observational mindset. You, listening right now, can look at the raw data of your life without the heavy baggage of guilt.
Exactly. When the scale spikes, don't judge your character. Just observe that maybe you had late takeout and make a tiny mechanical adjustment.
Stop looking for the perfect gym routine and treat your vacuuming or your yard work as your self-winding watch.
And above all, aggressively shrink your habits until they are too small to fail. Make the friction so low that your brain cannot say no.
We started this deep dive talking about how much we crave absolute certainty. The clean, jagged white line of an X-ray, broken or not broken.
Right.
We get frustrated when daily life feels murky and complicated because we can't just point to the one single thing that's wrong. But Ang's journal shows us that a balanced life isn't a single, static snapshot. It is an ongoing, living ledger.
Yeah, you don't need a perfectly clean X-ray. You just need to keep tracking the data, tweaking the inputs, and letting the interconnected system balance itself out.
It is a continuous, lifelong process of observation and gentle refinement. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Think about all the ecosystems you manage every single day. Your physical body, your home environment, your digital consumption.
You're all connected.
If you were to create your own holistic ledger starting tomorrow morning, what is the one hidden metric? A seemingly insignificant daily habit, a tiny digital input, or a small environmental factor that you are currently completely ignoring, but that might actually be secretly running your entire life.
It is a vital question to ask yourself.
Find that hidden metric, track it without judgment, see what happens when you adjust the input. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.